Namo Buddhaya. Welcome to today's Sutta study. So do you remember which Sutta we learned last time?
Uttara Sutta.
Good. I'm glad you remember. We learned the Uttara Sutta. And if a person practices what was taught, if a person practices the Dhamma exposition taught in the Uttara Sutta, it really makes that person a very strong-minded person who's able to face the world without, falling apart or without letting those 8 obsessions overcome his mind. Okay, it makes you a very strong person in life. So today we're going to learn a sutta which is a bit related or relevant to what we learned last time, and it's also about how to purify our mind. Okay, because our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha, teaches that a Buddha appears into this world in order to help people to purify one's mind from defilements. Because so through that we can then understand that the reason that we are traveling in this samsara and being reborn again and again and again in this samsara is because we were not able to purify our mind. Okay, so if a person does not purify his mind, then he cannot put a stop to this journey of birth and death. But if a person wants to put an end to this journey, this journey that's filled with sorrow, filled with suffering, then that person has to start by purifying his mind. Okay, so in order to purify a person's mind, that person needs a lot of merit in his life. It's not something that just it's not something that happens magically. Okay, some arahants were able to, in an instant, by simply listening to the Supreme Buddha's Dhamma, in an instant, they were able to purify their mind completely and become arahants. The reason they were able to do it so quickly is because they had collected merit in their past lives. Not just for 1 or 2 lives, but for many lives. They have attended to the Sangha, they have attended on the Buddha, they have worshipped stupas, they have worshipped Bodhi trees, and they have also practiced many good habits in their past lives. And it's that practice that allowed them to experience such a drastic change in one's mind. Okay, so if you want to purify your mind and be free from this samsara, then along with learning the Dhamma and along with trying to practice the Dhamma, you need to create the base for it, and that is collecting merit. Unless a person has collected past merit in his life, that person cannot even get the opportunity to listen to the Dhamma. That person cannot get the opportunity to become a virtuous person. That person cannot get the opportunity to practice Dhamma. Okay, so you need that base, that merit, in order. It's a supporter. It's the push that gives you. It's the push that you need to develop and advance in the Dhamma path. Okay, so this sutta that we are learning today, it's found in the Anguttara Nikaya, in the book of the Tenths. And the name of this sutta is called Kāya Sutta. That's a Pali word, Kāya Sutta. Okay. Our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha, in this sutta explains, because there are things to be abandoned by body, not by speech. There are things to be abandoned by speech, but not by body. And there are things to be abandoned neither by body nor by speech, but by having repeatedly seen with wisdom. Okay, this is a very important Dhamma point for us to understand. Okay, what does the Supreme Buddha teach? There are things to be abandoned by body. So what does that mean? By restraining our physical body or physical bodily actions, we can abandon certain unwholesome things. Okay, then so those things can only be abandoned from the body. It cannot be abandoned by speech. And then there are certain things that only can be abandoned by speech, but not by body. Okay. So what are those things? So if a person kills, if a person likes to kill, it's something that he does through his body. It's a physical action. So in order for him to stop it, abandon it, what should he do? He should restrain his bodily actions. He should stop himself from doing it. Okay. If a person steals, it's something that a person does through his bodily action. Stealing is a bodily action. So in order for that person to stop it, he should restrain his bodily action. Okay. Just if he restrains his speech, can he control his physical actions? No. It's something he has to do by controlling his physical body. Okay, so those are the things that needs to be abandoned through the body, not by speech. Then the Supreme Buddha teaches there are certain things in this life that needs to be abandoned through speech, but not by body. So if a person is always, if a person often lies, okay, he's so used to it. If someone asks something, he very easily lies. Lying is a very simple thing for him. For such a person, that lying has to be controlled by controlling his speech. He can't do this. He cannot do it by controlling his body. He has to control his speech. If a person is so used to saying harsh words to others, he has to learn to control his speech, and that's the way to abandon the defilement. Okay? And then the Sariputta teaches there are these things to be abandoned neither by body nor by speech, but by having repeatedly seen with wisdom. Okay? So we'll learn what those things are as we go on in the Sutta. And so the Supreme Buddha teaches, and what bhikkhus are the things to be abandoned by body, not by speech. Here, a bhikkhu has committed a particular unwholesome deed with the body. So a bhikkhu has, now remember, this is taught to the monks, so that's why it said a bhikkhu. But when you're listening to this, you should relate this Dhamma point to yourself. So the Supreme Buddha teaches, a bhikkhu has committed a particular unwholesome deed with the body. Okay, so it could be stealing something that does not belong to him. It could be killing an animal, a living being. Okay, so those are unwholesome deeds that can be done with the body. So when he does such a thing, his wise fellow monks sees it, and they say, you have committed an unwholesome deed with your body. Okay, why do they say? Because it's something that can be seen by another person. Right? When you do a bodily action, whether it's good or bad, it can be seen from somebody else. It can be seen by an outsider. Okay? So when a person sees you doing something wrong, then that person comes and tells you, you have done this bodily misconduct. And it would be good if you abandon this bodily misconduct and develop bodily good conduct. Okay, so if someone sees you stealing, then someone comes and points it out to you. You're stealing. It's not a good thing. You should not steal things that belongs to others. You should try to stop yourself from stealing. When his wise fellow monks tells him like this, what he does he abandons that bodily misconduct, and he restrains himself from doing those unwholesome deeds. These are called things to be abandoned by body, not by speech. Okay, so whenever we do something bad with our body, it can be shown by somebody else. Okay, you can get the advice from somebody else, and you can correct yourself, right? If you're associating with wise people, that is. Then the Surimada teaches, what are things to be abandoned by speech, not by body? Here, a bhikkhu has committed a particular unwholesome deed by speech. Okay, so what are wrong deeds to be done by speech? Lying, right? Saying harsh words, saying words to break people's friendships, simply saying empty words, saying words to cheat on people, fool people. Right? Those are bad things to do with the body, but with speech. So fellow monk hears you lying. A fellow monk hears you saying harsh words, hurtful words to another person, and that fellow monk comes and tells you that bhikkhu, you know, it's best that you abandon your verbal misconduct and practice good verbal conduct. And upon hearing this, what that monk does is he corrects himself. So when someone points out one of your faults, if you have one good quality within you, you accept it. When somebody points out one of your faults, if you have this quality within you, then you accept that fault. What is that? What is that quality? If you don't have this quality within you, then when somebody else points out one of your faults, you get angry. Okay, Aga says to be easy to correct. The word you're describing there is suppadinisago. Yes, to be easy to correct, it's true. So in order to be easy to correct, you need this quality, and that is called being humble. You need to be humble. If you're not a humble person, then when a person points out one of your faults, you don't want to accept it. You don't want to believe it. You don't want other people to show your faults. Some people, when another person points out a fault, what they do is they point out a fault of the person who pointed out the fault in him. Right? People do that a lot. So if you're someone like this, if you have such characteristics, then that means it's very difficult for you to come to the Dhamma. You should not be someone like that. You should be a humble person. Whenever someone points out one of your faults, the Supreme Buddha teaches that you should accept it like as if you just found a treasure. When someone points out one of your weaknesses, the Supreme Buddha teaches, good people, says, accept that as if you just found a treasure. It's that valuable to you. Why? Even a little weakness, if you recognize it, you can abandon it and correct yourself. Right? It helps you to advance. If a person doesn't tell us about our faults, then sometimes we can't even recognize it on our own. Right? So you should, as someone who is trying to practice this Dhamma path, you should be a very humble person who's more than willing to accept others' advice or the advice from the wise, I guess you could say. Okay, for example, Arahant Sariputta. Arahant Sariputta had this beautiful quality within him. Arahant Sariputta was one of the most humble bhikkhus. So now, if he wants to be egoistic, he had everything in his life to be egoistic, to be proud of himself, because he was the foremost in wisdom, right? But he was so humble that even if a novice monk would show him something, he would humbly accept it. For example, one day Arahant Sariputta was wearing the robe, and the robe was not equal all around. So Vimata has taught that when you wear the robe, when you go out, when you're wearing the robe should be at the ankle, and then it should be the same length all around. So when he wore the robe, from one side, it was a bit long, and one of the novice monks pointed out that fault in him, and Arahant Sariputta accepted it so happily. Right? That is the nature of Arahants even. So these are good habits or good qualities that we should also develop within our life. Okay. So this will be the teachers. When a person, so let's get back to the sutta. When a person points out that you have done something wrong through your verbal actions, you can correct it. If you're humble, then you can recognize it and you can correct it. Okay. So those are the two things that you can abandon through body and speech. And then the Supreme Buddha explains what are things to be abandoned neither by body nor by speech, but by having repeatedly seen with wisdom. Okay, this is remember the teachers. And in Pali, this is called, it's a beautiful verse, and I will tell you what that is. So remember the teachers, Panyava Disva Disva Pahatabba. Panya means wisdom. Panya Disva Disva Pahatabba. By seeing through one's wisdom, you should abandon defilements that arise in your mind. Okay, so what are these defilements that arise in our mind? Just remember the teachers, what they are. Greed. Greed is something that cannot be abandoned by body or speech. Right? Just because you control your bodily actions, does that control greed within? No. Just because you control your verbal action, does that control your greed within? No. It's something that arises in your mind, and it's something that you should abandon by seeing through wisdom. So that is why the Supreme Buddha teaches that the most precious gem there is in this world is wisdom. Because even if a person has all the gems in this world, it cannot help him to be free from suffering. It does not help him to purify his mind. But if a person has this gem of wisdom, it quickly helps him to purify his life and be free from all sorrow. Right? Gems can buy you many things, but it cannot buy Nibbana. But the gem of wisdom can get you close to Nibbana. Okay? So this will be the teachers. Greed is something that you need to abandon by having repeatedly seen with wisdom. When greed arises in your mind, you have to recognize it. How do you recognize it? Through your wisdom. So if a person doesn't have wisdom, he cannot deal with this greed. He just become a servant of greed. He acts, being a servant of greed means he acts according to the greediness and he does bad things. Then the teaches hatred. Hatred is something that you need to abandon by repeatedly seeing through wisdom. Delusion, anger, hostility. Okay, miserliness, and the feeling of rivalry, like competition, always, feeling I want to do better than him. I want to do better than him. That's called, um, having a sense of competition in your mind all the time. So all of these are defilements that arise in a person's mind. And so remember the teachers, these can only be abandoned through wisdom. Then the Supreme Buddha goes on to describe certain defilements that arise in our mind. Okay, the Supreme Buddha teaches evil envy because is to be abandoned neither by body nor by speech, but by having repeatedly seen with wisdom. And so Buddha explains what evil envy is. Here, a householder's son is very rich and prosperous, and he has a lot of wealth. And a slave, and one of his servants, or a person who depends on him, thinks, "Oh, may this household not prosper in wealth or grain," and that is called envy. Understand? The jealousy. So jealousy is something that needs to be abandoned, not through body, not through speech, but by seeing through one's wisdom. Okay, so when you see somebody else doing better than you, if you feel, no, let him not do better than me, let him not gain wealth, that is called jealousy. So the moment you get these thoughts, if you're wise, you can recognize it. Oh, right now my mind is filled with something unwholesome. Okay, so when you recognize it, then you can abandon it. Then there's the teachers, or a bhikkhu. Okay, there's a bhikkhu who gets the four requisites very easily, and another bhikkhu thinks, oh no, may he not gain the four requisites easily. Why? Because he's jealous of the other monk who gets the four requisites easily. That is called jealousy. So even if you're a lay person or a ordained person, these defilements can arise in your mind. So whether you're a lay person or a ordained person, the way to abandon these defilements is through wisdom, right? There is no difference between a lay person and an ordained person in the way of abandoning defilements. Both have to do it through wisdom. So jealousy is something a person should abandon from his life. And then the Supreme Buddha teaches evil desire, apicha, evil desire, because is to be abandoned not through body or speech, but rather from wisdom. It's something that one can abandon by seeing through wisdom. And the Supreme Buddha teaches what these evil desires are within us. Okay? The Supreme Buddha teaches a person who has no confidence in the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, he thinks, let others know me as someone with confidence. A person who has no Dhamma knowledge, he thinks, oh, let others know me as someone who's well versed in the Dhamma. What are they? Evil desires within. Then he thinks, someone who delights in company. That means he always wants to be with people. He always wants to be around people. And he always wants to talk with people. But in his mind, he thinks, no, let others know me as someone who loves solitude, who loves solitude, seclusion. It's a evil desire. One who is lazy desires let others know me as being a very energetic, effortful person. So what are those? Those are evil desires. So all of these evil desires are there because that person wants to make himself look like a really good person, but inside he does not have these good qualities. So these are these are very subtle defilements in our mind. That's why the Supreme Buddha explains these in detail. These subtle defilements can completely destroy our Dhammapath if you let them grow within. That's why you need wisdom in order to abandon them quickly without letting these defilements sprout and grow. Right? When you plant a seed, okay, when it's just a plantling, it's very easy to take it out, right? It's very easy to root it out. But once it becomes a huge tree, is it easy to remove it? No. Right? So these evil desires, if you can recognize them the moment they arise in your mind, then you can quickly abandon it. Or else what happens is these evil desires grow within your mind and then you act according to them, and then it grows and grows and grows, and it makes a huge it makes you fall into big trouble, and at the end only you realize, oh, this was the beginning of all of this. Understand? So by then it's very difficult to reverse that process. This is what the teachers. A person who does not have a samadhi, he thinks, let others know me as someone who has a very concentrated mind. Right? Someone who is unwise has the desire, let others see me as being really wise. And then the Surya teaches, someone who has not destroyed defilements, things, let others know me as one who has completely eradicated all taints. And then, this is what the teachers, this is called evil desire. So if a person has the desire to make himself look good, but actually inside he does not have them, then that is an evil desire. Okay? So this will be what the teachers. These evil desires are to be abandoned not by body, not by speech, but by seeing through wisdom. Because now remember, if you make a mistake, if you do something wrong through your body, another person can see it and tell you what you're doing is wrong. So at least at least because of the shamefulness, you would stop yourself from doing it. Right? If you say a bad word, then others can hear you and then can come and tell you, you're saying these things. It's not very good. It's not very good. You'll probably stop it. They can come and tell you because they can hear you. So you have the opportunity to stop yourself from doing those wrong things. And at least because of the shyness or because of being ashamed of others hearing you, hearing what you're saying, you will stop it. But can others see what's on your mind? No, right? Others can't see what's on your mind. You can think anything, and nobody, usually person cannot see what's on your mind. Right? Therefore, no one is going to come and tell you, you have this in your mind. You have that, you have anger, you're now angry. You have now jealousy within you. You have this evil desire within you. Nobody's going to come and tell you these things because they can't see. So who can see it? You can see it. You can see it only if you're wise. That's why the Supreme teaches it's something to be abandoned by seeing through wisdom. It's something that you need to understand through yourself. the Supreme Buddha teaches, if greed overcomes that bhikkhu and continues on, if hatred, delusion, anger, hostility, if all of these defilements overcome that bhikkhu and continues on, then he should be understood thus. That is, when you see if a person has these bad defilements in his mind, you should understand. Now, we cannot see the defilement arising, but by the way he's acting, we know this is a greedy person, right? By the way he's acting, we know this is an angry person. Okay, so through his action, we can recognize that person to a certain extent. And when you see such a person, Supreme Buddha teacher, this is the way you should think. You should think, if a bhikkhu understands, if a bhikkhu who does not have greed within understands the Dhamma in a certain way, this bhikkhu doesn't understand the Dhamma in the same way. That is the reason he is greedy. If a bhikkhu who does not get angry, if a bhikkhu who does not have anger within understands Dhamma in a certain way, this bhikkhu who has anger does not understand the Dhamma in the same way. So see how wisely does remember the teaches us to think, right? If a bhikkhu who is deluded, if a bhikkhu who is not deluded understands Dhamma in a certain way, this bhikkhu who is deluded, who is foolish, does not understand the Dhamma in the same way. You should understand that person with those defilements in that way. And then if you see someone who does not have greed, if you see someone who does not get angry, if you see someone who does not become hostile, then you should think, you know, this monk understands the Dhamma in a certain way, and that is the reason that he does not get angry. This person understands the Dhamma in a certain way, that is the reason that he does not have greed within. Okay? This person understands Dhamma in a certain way, and that's the reason that he does not have evil desires within him. So with the teachers, that's the way to understand, because if you don't understand it in that way, what happens is when people act and speak according to these defilements, then we get angry with them. But thinking like this helps us to be very neutral. Thinking like this helps us to be very calm without letting ourselves be part of that person's defilements. Understand? So in this sutta, what the Supreme Buddha is really trying to teach is the defilements that arise in our mind are things that we need to abandon by recognizing them. Okay, so these defilements, anger, hatred, hostility, delusion, greed, miserliness, evil envy, evil desires, all of these things, they arise in our mind from time to time, depending on the environment. Okay, but all of us has these defilements within us. We have to first understand that. For you to understand it, for example, now suppose there's a newly married couple and they get a baby, okay, and so the baby is growing up, and then everybody's attention is on the baby, so he's very happy. He doesn't seem to have any problem in his life, and he doesn't seem to get angry. He doesn't have any jealousy within, okay, and then what happens is as time goes by, another baby is born. Okay, now all the attention goes to the newborn. Now what happens to the first child? He starts to feel jealous. He starts to get angry. he starts to become hostile, right? So were those defilements not there before? No, they were there. It's just that the environment was not there for it to arise. The moment the environment comes along, these defilements arise. Okay, for example, for as long as you're in control, everything seems to be good. But the moment somebody else uh, gets in control, it could be in your family, it could be in your workplace, then you get jealous, you get angry, you feel competition with it, right? So depending on the environment we are in, all of these defilements arise. And the Supreme Buddha teaches these defilements has to be abandoned by recognizing through yourself. Okay, in one sutta, the Supreme Buddha teaches a beautiful way to abandon these defilements, and that is, the Supreme Buddha teaches when these defilements arise in your mind, jealousy, evil desires, anger. Okay, so Buddha teaches think like this. Think, I'm someone, now this is taught to bhikkhus, right? Think I'm someone who has become ordained, not because I have no food to eat, not because I have nothing to wear. I became ordained because I want to be free from this sorrowful samsara. So I became ordained to practice Dhamma. Okay, so thinking about yourself, it's called Attadipate, thinking about yourself, who you are, and thinking about your dignity, you abandon those evil desires, you abandon those bad defilements in your mind. Understand? So if you, for yourself, you can think, when these evil desires, when these evil defilements arise in your mind, you can think, no, I'm a disciple of the Supreme Buddha. I am known to be a lay disciple of the Supreme Buddha. It's not a good thing that I think these thoughts. Okay, so that you do through your wisdom. If you don't have wisdom, you can't do this. Right? And then you abandon it, thinking about yourself and your integrity and your dignity as a disciple of the Buddha. And then you can think of the second one is called Lokadipati. Lokadipati means when these defilements arise in your mind, as the teachers think, there are people in this world who can read minds. There are gods in this world who can see my mind. There are Brahmas who can see my mind. As someone who has taken refuge in the Buddha Dhamma and the Sangha, if they see, I'm thinking these bad thoughts, it's not good for me. They will never, if it's a God, that God will never appear in front of me. He will never help me in anything. So thinking of the fact, and there are humans who can read minds. There are certain people who have the ability to recognize what's in the other person's mind. So if you're especially those people who are very meditative, very high samadhi, they have the ability to read other people's minds. So if you're thinking these bad thoughts, now you can be listening to you can be in the monastery. You can be in the monastery, you can be in a meditation session, but in your mind, you may be thinking bad things. Maybe lust is overcoming your mind, right? So in such a situation, you can think, no, there are people who can see my mind. There are gods and Brahmas who can read my mind. It's not a good thing that I am thinking this and quickly abandon it. So that is called Lokadipatiya. Thinking about the world, reflecting on the world through your wisdom, you abandon those defilements. And the third is called Dhammadipatiya. Dhammadipatiya means thinking of the Dhamma. You're someone who is listening to a Dhamma that has the ability to make a person free from this samsara. The Supreme Buddha taught this Dhamma well. Swakato Bhagavata Dhamma. Sanditiko, this Dhamma is to be experienced in this very life. Akaliko, it's a Dhamma that's applicable at any moment, at any time. Pasiko, it's a Dhamma that's open to all. Anybody can come and experience and understand the Dhamma through his own self, through his own wisdom. So, as someone who's practicing this Dhamma, I should abandon these defilements and purify my mind. So, thinking about the Dhamma, you abandon those minds called Dhammadipatteya. Okay, so to do all of those things, what do you need? You need wisdom. You can only do it if you're wise. If you're not, if you're wise, if you're unwise, you will let those greed, evil desires, evil envy, hostility, and all of those defilements overcome your mind. And once they overcome your mind, you're a subject of those defilements, and you act according to them. Okay. So when a person is trying to purify this mind, this is a good way for you to think and practice in order to abandon defilements that arise in your mind. Okay, and sometimes, now remember I said, depending on the environment, sometimes some defilements arise, and some environments, some defilements are not very prominent. Okay, so then what happens is, if for a long time you're living in a very comfortable environment where there is nothing to make you angry, there's nothing that happens that makes you hostile, then sometimes, this happens to people who practice the Dhamma. So if you're living in such an environment, after a long time, you think, oh, maybe now I'm an arahant. I don't get angry anymore. I don't feel greed anymore. So there are instances where you become deluded like that as well. Yeah, that happened during the Supreme Buddha's time. There were a group of monks and they thought that they were arahants. Okay? So they thought, okay, now we have attained arahantship. We don't have any desire, hatred, or delusion within us. So it's best that we go and worship the Supreme Buddha now, because Supreme Buddha is the one who helped us to escape from suffering. And so they went to the Supreme Buddha. And so our great teacher Supreme Buddha saw that these monks have been deluded and thinking they are arahants, they are coming to worship the Supreme Buddha. So the Supreme Buddha, being most compassionate, sent them a message. And the Supreme Buddha asked them, before you come to worship me, go to the charnel ground. Go to the charnel ground, spend some time there, and then come to me. Okay, so these monks, they went to the charnel ground, and charnel ground is a place where there are many dead bodies. So when they went to the charnel ground, they saw a newly brought body of a young, beautiful girl, and some of her private parts were exposed. And when those monks saw that body of that beautiful woman, what happened is lust arose within their mind. Now see, so they thought they were arahants. And at that moment, they were wise enough to recognize that, wow, lust has arose in my mind. And they realized that they have not attained arahantship. And right then and there, what they did is they accepted the reality. And then right then and there, they practiced meditation. They developed jhana and developed insight meditation. And right then and there, they became arahants. And after they became actual arahants, then they came back to the Supreme Buddha. And at that time, the Supreme Buddha happily accepted them and spoke to them. So see, even during the Buddha's time, such things happen. So that's why you have to be very mindful and be very wise in order to recognize what's on the mind, because this mind is very is very misguiding. Okay, so this sutta is a beautiful sutta that really helps us to focus on purifying our mind. So may this beautiful sutta help all of us to repeatedly investigate what's on our mind, abandon defilements, and purify our mind and escape from all suffering in this Gautam Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.